Okay, Algebra 2, Mod 8. Today is Wednesday, May 20th. So top left corner, 5/20/20. Hang in there. This is our next to last day of notes here. Continuing with our review of different types of functions you should be able to quickly and accurately sketch heading into next year. Put the title exponential at the top. We're talking about exponential functions. This was one of the first things I taught you when I took over for Mr. DeMarco, so hopefully we're okay here. Again, they're called exponential functions because every one of them is a function that has a missing exponent, okay? Remember how easy this is. I mean, if I told you right now, go ahead and graph this first one quick. Let's see how you can do. I'm not sure how many are going to exactly remember the process. I hope you remember that it does end up being a curved function of some kind. And the best way to do this, remember, was to make an XY table. And your goal is to make this exponent turn into the numbers -1, 0, and 1. Does that ring a bell? Because it's a nice balanced table of a negative number, 0, and a positive. And they're the three easiest numbers to quickly work with just to generate a sketch. And that's our goal here. Can I sketch this picture as quickly and as accurately as I can? Now remember when you plug these numbers in, when I take -1 and plug that in for x, and this says 3 to the negative first power, guys, the answer is not -3. A negative power doesn't make it a negative answer. Remember, it flips it over and makes it a fraction. So 3 to the negative first really just takes 3 to the first and flips it over. And remember, gives you 1/3. That should make sense. Plug 0 in for x. Anything to the 0 power, remember, is what? 1 no matter what. And finally, plug 1 in. 3 to the first is 3. That's it. I only need 3 dots to generate a curved shape. So I'm going to go up a few, down a few, nice and neat here. Might as well make neatness count. I'm going to go left 1, up 1/3. That's not very tall. Right 0 and up 1. Guys, that's why 2 dots never works. Right now, those 2 dots look like a line, don't they? But this third dot of 1, 3, right 1 and up 3, gives you how steep it curves upwards. Go through those dots and steeply curve up, and remember that it's close to the x-axis and doesn't touch it. And you've got a curved exponential function that looks like that. Remember, that was called exponential growth. Now what if the exponent is a negative number? That's probably exponential decay. So I'm going to predict another curve, but probably curving downhill instead of uphill. Let's see. Once again, I make an X and a Y table. Okay, now freeze. Listen to me. Do not plug in -1, 0, and 1 every time for all these. You want your exponents to become -1, then 0, then 1. So since there's a negative here, and we want this first exponent to be a -1, wouldn't that mean we just plug in 1, then 0? And then if we want the third exponent to be a 1, wouldn't we plug in -1? Because -1 would turn it into a 1. So even if you had the order reversed, it would still create the same dots. You might as well, though, stick to your thinking of trying to create -1, 0, and 1 for your 3 points. Okay, let's take 1 and go plug it in for x. That would make this 4 to the -1, which would be what? 1/4. Agreed? Go plug 0 in. Anything to the 0 power is 1. Plug -1 in for x, and that would make this -1, which is 1. And 4 to the first is 4. All right, big deal. Piece of cake. I'm going to draw my picture. Certainly we need to go up 4, down a couple, left a couple, right a couple. Plotting my 3 points. Careful now, plot your points correctly. I'm going to go right 1 and up 1/4. Right 0 and up 1. Finally, left 1 and up 4. And just as I predicted, when I connect these dots, it's still a steep curved picture, but it's curving downhill and again getting close to the x-axis. Okay? All right, third one. Oh boy, it says y equals 2 over x minus 2. All right, again, of course, that's called an exponential function because it's got an exponent with an x in it. I make a table, and guys, I'll emphasize this again. If this is you doing your assignment tonight, you don't just plug in -1, 0, and 1. You want this exponent up here to turn into a -1, and then turn into a 0, and then turn into a 1. So you got to think about, boy, what numbers would I plug in that would make sense? Okay, let's think. If you want this exponent to end up being a -1, wouldn't you put in a 1 first for x? Because 1 minus 2 is -1, and 2 to the negative first is a half. Oh, now we want it to turn into a 0. So wouldn't we plug in 2 next? 2 minus 2 is 0, and 2 to the 0 power is 1. And then we'd plug 3 in, because when we take 3 and plug it in for x, 3 minus 2 is 1, and 2 to the first is 2. So picture-wise, we're still predicting some kind of a curved shape, right? Looks like we should go up a few, down a few, right a few, and left a couple. I'm going to plot right 1, up a half. You just plot your points. Right 2 and up 1. That's a little taller than that last dot. And then right 3 and up 2. Ah, so it's not as steep of a curve, is it? It still curves upward, and it still gets close to the x-axis and looks like that. Okay, less steep because the base is only a 2 instead of a 3 or a 4 like the others. And then we got a little star by this last one. We might as well challenge you advanced brains here a little bit. I'm going to make a table. Now, guys, don't panic. All the numbers you're looking at is irrelevant. Isn't your job to look at this exponent and turn it into a -1 first? Agreed? What number would you plug in for x that would cause the exponent to become a -1? Wouldn't it be 0? Right? You got to think. You just got to use your brain. Think about it. What's 2 times 0? 0 minus 1 would be -1. And what's 4 to the negative first power? 1/4. So I've got 3 minus 1/4, which is 2 3/4. Oh, well, you might have to think a little bit. Now, when I say, what number should I plug in next? Instead of just saying, I don't know. Okay, what are we trying to do? We're trying to turn the exponent into a 0 this time, aren't we? Now, this is tricky. Doesn't that mean, that I'd have to plug in 1/2 for x? Because watch, what's 2 times 1/2? Oh, well, that'd be 1. Minus 1 would give me 0, which is what we wanted. And 4 to the 0 power is what? Anything to the 0 power is 1. So 3 minus 1 gives me 2. Finally, don't we want this exponent to be a 1? So what would I plug in? Wouldn't I plug in a 1? Because look, what's 2 times 1? 2. Minus 1 gives me 1. And what's 4 to the first? 4. 3 minus 4? -1. Oh, I did it. That's why there was a star by that one. We're allowed to challenge you a little bit here. Plotting these numbers, I'm going to go up a few, down a couple, right a couple, left a couple. Now, careful, when I plot this first point, it's right 0 and up 2 3/4. Big deal. Right a half and up 2. Right 1 and down 1. Whoa. So this thing here, what the heck's going on? If I plotted 0, 2 3/4, right a half, up 2, right 1, down 1, this is a curve looking like that. Agreed? And flattens out up here at 3. Oh, because there was a 3 right there. So 3 is kind of our asymptote, and it hits that curve and then flattens downward this way. And you never know quite the curvature of the shape until you plot your points and connect them up. So it can get a little bit challenging when you see something like that. So at least give it a shot. All right, your next to last homework assignment of the year. Again, today is what? Wednesday, May 20th. So this assignment's due on Thursday, the 21st by noon. You're to do your own work, not send a picture of your work to 2 or 3 friends and have them just copy down your problems. That's pretty disgusting, to be honest with you. If you're so lazy that you cannot watch a 12-minute video and try to learn a little bit by doing your own work, then I don't know what to tell you. So please, guys, give it a shot. Do the best you can here and turn in these 4 problems by tomorrow, Thursday, the 21st at noon. 5 to the x, 2 to the negative x, 3 to the 2 minus x, and then 2 to the x plus 1 minus 4. That's your challenge problem. Tomorrow on Thursday will be our last note-taking session together on a topic called piecewise functions. So we'll end with a type of function you haven't learned yet, and that'll be it for the year. That assignment, of course, would be due Friday at noon. Check your Schoology on Friday. There will just be a big note kind of wrapping everything up and giving you instructions on how we're going to finish out the year and your grade and things like that, okay? Great job. We'll see you tomorrow.